biggest mysteries in all of A Song of Ice and Fire that was completely glossed over by HBO's adaptation is the Long Night. I mean, look, I know the Long Night is shrouded in mystery and all that, and I know the television version of a book can't always be faithful to the deep lore. Nerd rage, nerd rage. But it really does seem like it should have been, longer than a typical night, right? Indeed, Old Nan tells us that compared to the original Long Night, what we saw on the show was some weak-ass bullshit.
Oh, my sweet summer child, what do you know of fear? Fear's for the winter, my little lord, when the snows fall 100 feet deep and the ice wind comes howling out of the north. Fear is for the long night, when the sun hides its face for years at a time, and little children are born and live and die all in darkness, while the dire wolves grow gaunt and hungry, and the white walkers move through the woods.
Old Nan goes on to say that the Long Night was when a winter fell that was cold and hard and endless beyond all memory of man, and also when there came a night that lasted a generation. Plus there's some stuff about kings shivering and dying in their castles, mothers smothering their babies instead of watching through frozen tears as they slowly starve, and of course, the invasion of the others. That's the crux of the matter, really. Tormund Giantsbane tells us that the White Walkers are essentially like icy vampires in that they won't come out by day, not when that old sun's shining. That means that the others actually need a long night to invade Westeros. They need that dratted old sun to be hidden for an extended period of time so they can carry out their full vision of hope and change for the Seven Kingdoms. And that means that we're looking for a trigger mechanism. Something to really, actually prevent the sun's light from reaching the surface of the planet. This is true for both the original Long Night and the new Long Night, which is surely coming. So if we can puzzle out the cause of the first Long Night, then we'll have ourselves a big, giant, red beacon of a clue about how A Song of Ice and Fire will end. That's just what this video will attempt to do. Reveal the cause of the first Long Night and thereby predict a major event upcoming in the Winds of Winter. So hey there friends, it's David Lightbringer, and I am very pleased to present to you my most important theory, and I have to say I'm pretty fired up about it. Before we go any further, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel, make sure you set the notification bell to all notifications, and if you'd be so kind, hit the like button one time for Old Nan. She's working hard out there after all. So, as I asked in my first produced video ever, what is the trigger mechanism for the Long Night? How does one hide the sun? On the show, there were just sort of storm clouds that kind of followed the White Walkers around, and that was that. In the book universe, however, we know that the Long Night of the ancient past was experienced all across the known world, right? From Westeros to the lands of the Rhoyne, to Yi and to Shy by the Shadow. And although there are accounts of demons of some kind invading the lands of the very far east during the Long Night, which implies that the others or something similar may have been present there too, it does seem that the Long Night was a global darkness experienced by everyone, as opposed to a local phenomenon like clouds that only hover over the others. Now, perhaps Martin is actually imagining a global snowstorm issuing out from the heart of winter in all directions and covering half the planet. That would be pretty cool, to be honest, though something would still need to trigger it, of course. However, there's another prime suspect that our author is calling our attention to, and that's the Red Comet. Comet and meteor impacts can and have plunged our own very real planet into periods of global darkness, and that's without magic involved. Any sort of significant comet or meteor impact event in A Song of Ice and Fire would almost certainly be a magical event, because the magic in A Song of Ice and Fire seems very strongly tied to the elements and the forces of nature, such as ice and fire, water, trees, human blood, obsidian, and so on. And also because we've already heard that meteorites can be magical if the tales about the Dawn meteorite are true. Ergo, a magical comet or meteor impact could work pretty well as a fantasy world trigger for a magically enhanced global winter event. And there's not really much else that could. You see, if you want a global winter that hides the sun from the Earth's surface, you kind of only have three choices for a rational explanation: a comet or meteor impact, a supermassive volcanic event, or a massive nuclear explosion or series of explosions. The nuclear winter can be ruled out entirely because A Song of Ice and Fire is a fantasy story through and through, with basically no hint whatsoever of any sort of modern human technology. The volcanic explanation is theoretically possible, but unlikely, because we've already seen an ungodly huge volcanic chain explosion only 400 years ago in the Doom of Valyria, and no long night or global darkness is recorded as having taken place. The Red Comet, however, well, that's featured prominently early on in the story, and more importantly, the Azor Ahai reborn prophecy already links the appearance of the Red Comet to the fall of a new long night. Melisandre tells us all about it in A Storm of Swords.
It is written in prophecy as well. When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone.
So as I said, the bleeding star, the Red Comet, and the gathering darkness of a new long night, well, they're prophesied to arrive together. Perhaps that's because the Red Comet will kick off the new long night. Maybe. Now, it's true that the Red Comet has come and gone without causing any long nights, but what if it, or another like it, were to return by the end of the Winds of Winter to do the job? And spoiler alert, I'm predicting that it will. Check out this other highly suggestive quote from Melisandre about the rebirth of Azor Ahai and the new long night.
In ancient books of Ashai it is written that there will come a day after a long summer when the stars bleed and the cold breath of darkness falls heavy on the world. In this dread hour, a warrior shall draw from the fire a burning sword, and that sword shall be Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes. And he who clasps it shall be Azor Ahai come again, and the darkness shall flee before him.
This time, instead of the long night arriving with one bleeding star, Melisandre speaks of the cold breath of darkness falling on the world when the stars bleed, as in plural bleeding stars. Although this line is mostly overlooked as general apocalyptic language, such as we find in the biblical book of Revelation, it's actually a fairly unambiguous quote. When the stars bleed can really only refer to multiple falling stars in the sky, meaning a meteor shower of some kind. A meteor shower that will fall heavy on the world and plunge it into the darkness of the long night. Perhaps. Now, as for the original long night of ancient legend, well, we find signs of falling space debris there as well. In the Far East, we find tales of the moon cracking open, and a story about a fellow named the Bloodstone Emperor, who was said to have both caused the long night and to have worshipped a black stone that fell from the sky around that time. I just mentioned the very unique meteor sword, Dawn, supposedly made when the first Dane followed the track of a falling star and there found a stone of magical powers. And of course it seems likely that Dawn will turn out to be the original Lightbringer, or the last hero's magical sword of dragonsteel, or probably both. If so, that's another magical meteorite associated with a long night. In other words, it seems that Martin wants us to look to the skies when we think about long nights, past or future, which is perhaps why he said this one time in 2013. 2 big books, 1,500 manuscript pages each. That's 3,000 pages. I think I have a good shot. And you know, if I really get pressed, I've already established that Red Comet. I can just have it hit Westeros and wipe out all life. Imagine the private joke that George might be having here, if indeed he does plan on bringing the Red Comet back around, not to end all life, but to trigger a new long night, which is a threat to all life. No, I'm certainly not basing my theory on this, but if I'm at all close to the mark, then George is indeed having a grand chuckle with himself here, even as the audience laughs at the joke that he's kind of using for cover, if you will. Oh, the Red Comet coming back, that's so silly. Yeah. Now, let me tell you, this is far from the only way that he's establishing, quote-unquote, the Red Comet as a potential trigger of the apocalypse. Yes, the Red Comet. Terrible business, that. Dark stars, dark words, as they say. And more bad news. This video is over. What? So soon? Well, the good news is that I've actually got a whole week of Nightbringer videos for you. Oh yeah. What you just watched was actually the first section of what would have been another hour-plus monstrosity video, but I zigged instead of zagged, and now we have 5 short videos coming out 5 days in a row, and that's not bad, right? Tomorrow it's Nightbringer Part 2, Legends of the Long Night. Part 3 will be The Red Sword of Ahai. Part 4 is called Moon Dragons, and then by the time you've watched Part 5, As Above, So Below, you'll know most everything there is to know about the Long Night, Azor Ahai, Dawn, The Last Hero, and all that good stuff. So thanks for watching and for leaving comments on the video below, and I'll be back like a comet with Part 2.